At my son's seventh-day memorial service, my greedy daughter-in-law posted a selfie with the caption, "The new heiress of the Davies empire." I smiled and made sure she couldn't find a job, not even washing dishes. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The church was silent except for the soft sobbing echoing through the wooden pews. I sat in the front row, my black dress feeling too tight around my chest as I struggled to breathe. 7 days. Only 7 days since I'd lost Travis. My only son, my heart, my everything. The priest's words washed over me without meaning. I couldn't focus on anything except the gaping hole in my chest where my heart used to be. Travis had been only 42. Too young. Much too young to leave this world. To leave me alone. I clutched my handkerchief, already damp with tears, and tried to steady my breathing. The memorial service was almost over, and people would soon approach. Me with those same pitying eyes, those same empty phrases. He's in a better place. Time heals all wounds. As if time could ever heal the wound of outliving your child. My phone vibrated in my purse. I normally wouldn't check it during a service, especially not my son's memorial, but something compelled me to look. Perhaps it was divine intervention, or perhaps just the universe's cruel way of twisting the knife deeper. It was a notification from Instagram. Stella, my daughter-in-law, had posted something. With trembling fingers, I opened the app and froze. There she was, standing in front of the mirror in the master bedroom of my son's house, of our family home, wearing a black designer dress that probably cost more than what most people make in a month. Her face was perfectly made up, not a tear in sight, her red lipstick immaculate, but it was the caption that made my blood turn to ice. The new heiress to the Davies empire. Moving forward for Stunchired new beginnings. The phone nearly slipped from my fingers. 7 days. It had been only 7 days since we buried my son, and already she was celebrating her inheritance. The same inheritance my late husband and I had spent decades building, that Travis had expanded with his brilliant business mind. I looked up from my phone to see her sitting across the aisle, her head bowed in what I now recognized as a performance of grief. Everything about Stella had always been a performance. The doting wife, the grieving widow, all acts in her elaborate play to get her hands on our family's wealth. Travis had been blind to it. "Mom, you're too hard on her," he'd say. "Stella loves me for who I am, not what I have." I wanted to believe him for his sake. But mothers know. We always know. 3 years ago, when Travis first brought her home, I saw the calculating look in her eyes as she surveyed our estate. I noticed how her questions always circled back to the business, to our properties, to our connections. But Travis was smitten, enchanted by her beauty and charm, deaf to my gentle warnings. The service ended, and people rose to their feet. I tucked my phone away, straightened my back, and prepared to receive condolences. Stella was already working, the room, touching people's arms, her face a mask of perfect sorrow. I watched as she approached Travis's business partners, men who controlled millions, and saw how subtly her demeanor changed, more engaged, more attentive. Mrs. Blackwell, my oldest friend, squeezed my hand. "Shirley, you're pale as a ghost. Are you all right? Did you know?" I whispered, my voice hoarse. "Did you know Travis changed his will last month?" Mrs. Blackwell's eyes widened slightly. "No, I didn't. What do you mean?" "He left everything to her. Everything." The words tasted, bitter on my tongue. The house, his shares in the company, even the summer cottage that's been in our family for generations. "But surely he left something for you? The prenuptial agreement was never signed," I finished for her. "Travis convinced himself it wasn't necessary. He said it would start their marriage on the wrong foot." I laughed, a hollow sound that made Mrs. Blackwell flinch. "And now she gets it all. I watched as Stella accepted a tissue from an elderly gentleman, Mr. Harrington, one of our biggest investors, dabbing at eyes that remained suspiciously dry. "I won't let her have it," I said, my voice suddenly steady. "I won't let her destroy everything we built." Mrs. Blackwell looked at me with concern. "Shirley, what are you planning?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because the plan was only just forming in my mind. But one thing was crystal clear. Stella thought she had won. She thought that with Travis gone, I was just a grieving old woman who could be easily pushed aside. She had no idea who she was dealing with. As the mourners filed out of the church, I remained seated, watching as Stella networked her way through my son's memorial service. When the church had emptied, I finally stood and walked slowly to the front, where Travis's portrait sat surrounded by white lilies. "I promise you," I whispered to his smiling face, "she won't get a penny, and she'll never find work in this town again, not even washing dishes." The day after the memorial service, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt since Travis's death. Grief still weighed on me like a physical presence, but now it was accompanied by something else: purpose. I couldn't bring Travis back, but I could protect what he'd worked for, what generations of our family had built. I dressed carefully in a navy suit that had always made me feel powerful, even at 68. "Know your enemy," my late husband Richard used to say. And to know Stella, I needed to dig deeper than her Instagram facade. My first stop was George Wilkins, who had been our family driver for nearly 20 years until Stella convinced Travis they no longer needed him. I found him working at a local car service, his face lighting up when he saw me. "Mrs. Davies," he said, helping me into a chair in the small break room. "I was at the service yesterday, though I stayed in the back. I'm so sorry about Mr. Travis." "Thank you, George." I reached for his weathered hand. "I need to ask you something important. When you worked for us, did you ever notice anything unusual about Stella?" George hesitated, looking down at his coffee cup. "It's not my place to speak ill of—" "Please," I interrupted. "Travis is gone, and I fear she's going to destroy everything he cared about." He sighed heavily. "There were phone calls, late at night when Mr. Travis was away on business. I'd hear her in the garden, speaking in whispers. Once I drove her to a cafe downtown. She asked me to wait in the car, but I saw her meeting a man. They seemed familiar with each other." "Did you tell Travis?" "I tried to hint at it, ma'am. But he just said I was being overprotective of him, like you were." My heart clenched. How blind Travis had been to her manipulation. "There's something else," George said, lowering his voice. "The day before I was let go, I overheard Stella on the phone. She said, 'Once it's done, we'll never have to worry about money again.' I thought she was talking about some business deal, but now Travis was dead. The timing was too convenient to ignore." "Did Travis seem ill before he died?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Not ill exactly, but different. More forgetful, sometimes confused. We all thought it was stress from work." I thanked George and left him my number, asking him to call if he remembered anything else. My next stop was the offices of Davies Holdings, the company my husband had founded, and Travis had expanded into a commercial real estate empire. The receptionist's eyes widened when I walked in. "Mrs. Davies, we weren't expecting you." "I'd like to see Jonathan, please," I said, referring to Jonathan Myers, our family's attorney for the past 30 years. She made a quick call, her expression growing uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Davies, but Mr. Myers is in meetings all day." "I'll—" "Wait," I said firmly, taking a seat in the lobby. After 20 minutes, a different door opened, and Stella emerged, dressed in a sleek black pantsuit, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun. She faltered slightly when she saw me, but quickly recovered. "Shirley, what a surprise." Her voice dripped with false warmth. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Evidently not," I replied coolly. "I'm here to see Jonathan." "Oh." Her smile tightened. I just finished meeting with him myself. We were discussing the transition of Travis's assets. As you know, he left everything to me. The casual way she said it, as if discussing the weather, made my blood boil. But I kept my expression neutral. Yes, I'm aware of the current will. That's actually what I wanted to discuss with Jonathan. Something flickered in her eyes. Was it worry? Well, I'm sure he'll explain that everything is in order. Travis was very clear about his wishes. Before I could respond, Jonathan himself appeared. He looked uncomfortable, refusing to meet my eyes. Shirley, I didn't know you were coming in today. Clearly, I said. Do you have a moment to speak privately? Jonathan glanced at Stella, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. That small gesture told me everything I needed to know. Jonathan, who had watched Travis grow up, who had been like family to us, was now in Stella's pocket. I have another meeting in 5 minutes, he said apologetically. Perhaps we could schedule something for next week? I stood up slowly, gathering my dignity around me like armor. That won't be necessary. I'll be finding new legal representation. Stella's smile was victorious as I walked out, but I wasn't. Defeated. I was just getting started. That evening, as I sat in my study reviewing old financial documents, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Davies? The voice was female, young, nervous. You don't know me, but I work at Meridian Pharmaceuticals. I was Mr. Davies's nurse during his last checkup 3 weeks ago. My hand tightened around the phone. Yes? There's something you should know. The day of his appointment, his wife, Mrs. Davies, insisted on speaking privately with Dr. Carson. Afterwards, your son's prescription was changed. I thought it was strange because he'd been on the same medication for years. My heart pounded. What kind of medication? For his heart condition, the new prescription was much stronger. I tried to ask Dr. Carson about it, but he shut me down, said it was none of my business. Thank you for telling me, I said, my mind racing. What's your name? I'd rather not say. I could lose my job. But she hesitated. I liked Mr. Davies. He was always kind to me. And when I saw the news about his sudden death, I couldn't stay silent. After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness, pieces falling into place. The mysterious phone calls George mentioned, the changed medication, the altered will. My doorbell rang, startling me from my thoughts. When I opened the door, a young man in a uniform handed me an envelope. Legal documents for Shirley Davies. Inside was an eviction notice. I had 30 days to vacate my home, the home I had shared with Richard, where we had raised Travis. The home that now, according to the documents, belonged solely to Stella. Sank to the floor, the paper crumpling in my hand, tears finally breaking through the dam of shock and anger. But even as I cried, a resolve hardened within me. Stella had declared war, but she would soon discover that she had gravely underestimated her opponent. The small apartment on Maple Street looked nothing like the spacious estate I'd called home for the past 40 years. The walls were thin, the furniture sparse, and the entire space could fit in the living room of my former house. But it was clean, affordable, and most importantly, Stella didn't know about it. I'd managed to remove my personal belongings before the sheriff arrived to enforce the eviction notice. Photographs, jewelry, and my husband's collection of rare books, things that held sentimental value rather than monetary worth. I hadn't fought the eviction. That battle would come later, on my terms. A knock at the door interrupted my unpacking. I hesitated, paranoid that Stella had somehow tracked me down. But when I looked through the peephole, I saw a familiar face that brought unexpected tears to my eyes. Margaret, I said, opening the door to our family's former housekeeper. How did you find me? Margaret Wilson had worked for our family for over 20 years before Stella convinced Travis they needed someone younger and more modern. At 65, Margaret was hardly decrepit, but Stella had gotten her way as usual. "George told me," she said, stepping inside with a casserole dish in her hands. "I hope that's all right. I brought lasagna." "It's more than all right," I said, genuinely touched. "It's wonderful to see a friendly face." Over dinner, Margaret's expression grew serious. "Mrs. Davies, Shirley, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you when Mr. Travis was still alive." I set down my fork, bracing myself. "Go on." "It's about Stella. She's not who she pretends to be." Margaret pulled an envelope from her purse. After she had me fired, I was angry. I started looking into her background. The story she told about growing up in Boston, attending Wellesley, none of it checked out. Inside the envelope were photocopies of newspaper, clippings, and what appeared to be court documents. Her real name is Stella Kowalski. She grew up in Detroit, dropped out of community college, and has been involved with at least 2 other wealthy men before your son. Both relationships ended when the men died unexpectedly. My hands trembled as I sorted through the papers. "Are you saying she—" "I don't have proof of anything criminal," Margaret said quickly. "But there's more. The week before Mr. Travis died, I overheard Stella on the phone with someone discussing the will. She said, 'He's finally agreed to change it. Just a little longer and everything will be ours.'" I felt cold all over. "Ours?" Margaret nodded grimly. "I think she has an accomplice." After Margaret left, I sat up late into the night, reviewing everything she had given me. According to the documents, Stella had been briefly married to a man named Edward Fleming, who died of an apparent heart attack at 45. His family had suspected foul play but couldn't prove anything. Stella, then known as Stella Fleming, had inherited everything and disappeared shortly after. I needed more than suspicions. I needed concrete evidence. The next morning, I made a call I'd been avoiding for years. "Elizabeth Davies speaking," answered a crisp voice. "Elizabeth, it's Shirley." Silence stretched between us. My sister-in-law and I hadn't spoken since Richard's funeral 5 years ago, when a dispute over his collection of vintage cars had erupted into a full-blown family feud. "Shirley," she finally said, "I heard about Travis. I'm so sorry." "Thank you." I took a deep breath. "I need your help." Elizabeth had been a federal prosecutor before retiring. If anyone knew how to build a case against Stella, it would be her. I. "Listening," she said. I told her everything. The suspicious circumstances of Travis's death, the changed will, what Margaret and George had told me. I could almost hear her legal mind working through the phone. "Meet me at Café Laurent tomorrow at 10, she said when I finished. "And Shirley, be careful. If even half of what you suspect is true, this woman is dangerous." That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Travis's face. Not as the successful businessman he'd become, but as the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. My beautiful son, possibly murdered by the woman he loved. The thought was almost too painful to bear. I must have eventually dozed off because I woke to my phone ringing insistently. It was an unknown number. "Mrs. Davies?" A man's voice, unfamiliar. "This is Detective Michael Rivera with the Westlake Police Department. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your son's death." My heart raced. "Has something happened?" "We've received some information that suggests your son's death may not have been due to natural causes. Would you be willing to come down to the station?" "Yes, of course. I'll be there in an hour." I dressed quickly, my mind spinning. Who had gone to? The police? Margaret? The nurse from Meridian Pharmaceuticals? At the station, Detective Rivera led me to a small room with bare walls and a table bolted to the floor. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with intelligent eyes and a notebook already open before him. "Mrs. Davies, when was the—" Last time you saw your son alive? 3 days before he died. We had lunch together at the grill on Main Street. And how did he seem? I thought back to that lunch. Tired. He mentioned having headaches, which wasn't normal for him. He also seemed confused at times. He repeated himself a few times, which wasn't like him at all. The detective made notes. Did he mention any concerns about his wife? No, but that wouldn't be unusual. Travis didn't like to hear criticism of Stella. Detective Rivera nodded. Mrs. Davies, we've received information suggesting that your daughter-in-law may have tampered with your son's medication. We're reopening the investigation into his death. Relief washed over me, followed immediately by renewed grief. Having my suspicions validated meant facing the terrible truth that Travis had been murdered. There's something else you should know, I said, my voice stronger now. I believe Stella manipulated my son into changing his will shortly before his death. She's done this before, with another wealthy man in Detroit. The detective's eyebrows rose. Do you have evidence of this? Not yet, but I'm working on it. As I left the station, my phone buzzed with a text from Elizabeth. Change of plans. Meet me at my house immediately. I've found something about the will. Driving to Elizabeth's Tudor-style home in the historic district, I felt a surge of hope for the first time since Travis died. Between the police investigation, Elizabeth's legal expertise, and the information from Margaret, I was finally fighting back. Elizabeth answered the door before I could knock, ushering me inside with an urgent expression. I've been making calls. All morning, she said, leading me to her study. Jonathan Myers changed law firms 2 months ago, which seemed odd given his long history with your family's company. So I reached out to an old colleague who works at his former firm. She pointed to her computer screen where an email was displayed. According to their records, Travis did change his will, but not the way Stella claims. He added her as a beneficiary, but specifically stated that you were to retain control of the company and the family home. This new will that leaves everything to Stella? It's a forgery. A forgery? I stared at Elizabeth, trying to process this bombshell. But how? Jonathan Myers has been our family attorney for decades. He would recognize Travis's signature. Elizabeth's expression hardened. That's what's bothering me. Either Jonathan is complicit or he's being manipulated somehow. She showed me a copy of the original will and the supposed new version. Look at the signatures. I examined them closely. To an untrained eye, they looked identical, but after 30 years of seeing Travis's handwriting, I could spot subtle differences. We need more than just our suspicions, Elizabeth said, her prosecutor's mind already mapping out a strategy. We need concrete evidence of the forgery, and we need to understand Jonathan's role in all this. That evening, we gathered in Elizabeth's dining room with Margaret and George, spreading out documents across the polished mahogany table. It felt strange, this unlikely alliance of a former housekeeper, a chauffeur, a retired prosecutor, and myself. Yet we were united by our love for Travis and our determination to see justice done. The police are reopening the investigation into Travis's death, I told them. But we need to build our own case against Stella. Elizabeth thinks the will is forged. But we need proof. George leaned forward. What about the man Stella used to meet? If we could find him. I've been thinking about that, Margaret said. About 2 weeks before Mr. Travis died, Stella received a delivery at the house. She was very secretive about it, took the package straight to her private room. What kind of package? Elizabeth asked. Small, about the size of a book. The delivery service was one I'd never seen before. Confidential courier, I think it was called. Elizabeth made a note. That could be important. What else? As we pieced together our knowledge of Stella's activities in the weeks leading up to Travis's death, a clearer picture began to emerge. She had been planning this for months, possibly with an accomplice, carefully manipulating Travis and those around him. We need to find out more about her past, I said. Elizabeth, Can you use your contacts to dig deeper into her previous marriage? And we need to locate this mystery man she was meeting. Elizabeth nodded. I'll make some calls. But Shirley, we need to talk about Davies Holdings. With the forged will, Stella now controls the company. Every day she's in charge, she could be draining assets or making destructive decisions. Not to mention she's living in your house, Margaret added indignantly. I took a deep breath. First things first, I need to make some calls of my own. Over the next 3 days, I reached out to old business associates, friends who sat on various boards with me over the years, and Travis's college roommate who now ran a major bank. I didn't tell them everything, just that there were concerning issues with the management of Davies Holdings under Stella's control. By the end of the week, Stella found herself facing unexpected roadblocks. The bank suddenly required additional signatures for large transactions. Key clients began delaying their dealings with the company. Vendors started requiring payment up front, citing new policies. Elizabeth called me on Friday afternoon, her voice triumphant. I just heard from my contact at Regent Bank. Stella tried to transfer $2 million to an offshore account and was denied. She's furious. I allowed myself a small smile. Good. Let her feel the pressure. There's more, Elizabeth continued. I found Edward Fleming's sister in Michigan. She's willing to talk to us about Stella, or as she knew her, Stella Kowalski. She's convinced Stella had something to do with her brother's death. When can we speak with her? She's flying in tomorrow. Also, I've filed a petition to contest the will on grounds of suspected forgery. The court has granted a temporary freeze on all major assets until the matter is resolved. I closed my eyes, relief washing over me. It wasn't a victory yet, but it was a start. That evening, Detective Rivera called with an update. Mrs. Davies, we've subpoenaed your son's medical records and the autopsy report. The toxicology results show elevated levels of his heart medication in his system, significantly higher than his prescribed dosage. My hand tightened around the phone. What does that mean? It means we have enough evidence to question Mrs. Davies formally about your son's death. We'll be bringing her in tomorrow morning. After hanging up, I sat on the edge of my bed, emotions churning. The evidence was mounting against Stella, but it didn't bring Travis back. Nothing would. For a moment, the weight of grief threatened to overwhelm me again. My phone buzzed with a text from Elizabeth. Just heard from my PI. Found the mystery man. Name is Victor Laszlo, former pharmaceutical sales rep. Has ties to Stella going back 5 years. Another piece of the puzzle falling into place. I was about to respond when another text came through, this one from an unknown number. I know what you're doing. Stop now, or you'll regret it. Not everyone involved in this has been identified. A chill ran down my spine. Stella knew we were closing in, and she was threatening me. But what did she mean about not everyone being identified? Who else was involved? I forwarded the message to Elizabeth and Detective Rivera, then double-checked that my apartment door was locked. For the first time, I felt genuinely afraid. Stella had possibly killed before and gotten away with it. What would stop her from coming after me? The next morning dawned gray and rainy, matching my mood as I drove to meet Dr. James Whitaker, who had performed Travis's autopsy. Elizabeth had arranged the meeting, calling in a favor from a former colleague. Dr. Whitaker was a tall, solemn man with silver hair and reading glasses perched on his nose. He greeted me with a firm handshake and genuine sympathy. Mrs. Davies, I've reviewed the toxicology results again in light of the police investigation. I believe I missed something important in my initial examination. He showed me the reports, explaining the technical details in layman's terms. Your son's heart condition was mild. It shouldn't have been fatal, even with stress. But these levels of medication would have caused cardiac arrest. The question is, how did so much medication get into his system? Could he have taken it accidentally? I asked. though I already knew the answer. Dr. Whitaker shook his head. The amount in his system was far too high for an accidental overdose. Someone deliberately administered an excessive dose. As I left Dr. Whitaker's office, my phone rang. It was Detective Rivera, his voice tense. "Mrs. Davies, we went to question Stella this morning, but she wasn't at the house. According to the staff, she left in a hurry last night with several suitcases. We've put out an alert, but I wanted to warn you. She may try to contact you." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Thank you, Detective. I'll be careful." I had just pulled into Elizabeth's driveway when I saw a black SUV parked across the street, its engine running. As I watched, the passenger window rolled down, revealing Stella's face. Our eyes met, and for a moment, the world seemed to freeze. Then, the window rolled up and the SUV pulled away from the curb, disappearing around the corner. She hadn't fled. She was watching me, and somehow that was more terrifying than any text message threat. Elizabeth insisted I stay with her after the encounter with Stella. "She knows where your apartment is," she argued, setting up the guest room. "You'll be safer here, and I have a security system." I didn't fight her on this. The cold look in Stella's eyes had shaken me more than I cared to admit. That evening, Emily Fleming arrived from Detroit, a thin, serious woman in her 40s who bore little resemblance to her late brother, except for the same deep-set eyes. "Edward was my only family," she said, sitting rigidly in Elizabeth's living room. "After our parents died, we only had each other. When he met Stella, I was happy for him. He'd been alone too long." "How did they meet?" I asked. "At a charity gala. She was working as an event coordinator. Within 3 months, they were married." Emily's mouth tightened. Everything changed after that. Edward became distant, secretive. When I visited them, Stella always hovered, never leaving us alone. Elizabeth leaned forward. "And then he died." Emily nodded, blinking back tears. "Heart attack," they said. But Edward had no history of heart problems. None. When I questioned it, Stella became defensive, accusing me of being jealous of their happiness. "Did you suspect foul play?" I asked gently. "Of course I did. I went to the police, but they said there was no evidence. Edward was cremated immediately, at Stella's insistence. She claimed it was what he wanted, but Edward and I had discussed burial plots next to our parents. He never mentioned cremation. The parallels to Travis's death were chilling. The same method, the same swift action to secure assets. "Did Stella have an accomplice?" Elizabeth asked. "Someone who visited frequently or called?" Emily frowned. "There was someone. A man Edward introduced as Stella's cousin. Victor, I think. He was at the house a lot toward the end." Elizabeth and I exchanged glances. Victor Laszlo, the same man Stella had been meeting secretly. "Did this Victor have any medical background?" I asked, remembering he was a pharmaceutical sales rep. "I don't know, but after Edward died, I saw him at the memorial service, talking to Stella. They seemed intimate, not like cousins at all." After Emily left, promising to send us any documents she had from her brother's case, Elizabeth and I updated Detective Rivera on what we'd learned. "This gives us a pattern," he said. 2 men, both with newly developed heart conditions, both dying unexpectedly after changing their wills in Stella's favor. And both times this Victor Laszlo is in the picture. "Have you located him?" Elizabeth asked. "Not yet, but we're close. His credit card was used at a motel outside of town yesterday. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in Elizabeth's old house made me start, imagining Stella lurking in the shadows. Around 3 a.m., I gave up and went downstairs to make tea. The kettle boiled. My phone lit up with a text from Margaret. "She's back at the house. Just saw lights on in the study." I texted back, "Stay away. Call Detective Rivera." Within minutes, Rivera confirmed they had officers watching the house. If Stella was inside, she wouldn't be leaving without being questioned. Morning brought news that broke the case wide open. Doctor Whitaker called, his voice urgent. Mrs. Davies, I've been reviewing all of your son's medical tests from the past year. I found something strange in his blood work from 6 months ago compared to more recent tests. What is it? There are traces of a compound that wouldn't show up in standard toxicology but can mimic symptoms of heart disease over time. It's called thallium. It's tasteless, odorless, and can be administered in small doses to create chronic symptoms that look like natural illness. My blood ran cold. Are you saying Travis was being poisoned for months? It appears so. I've already notified Detective Rivera. This changes everything. It shows premeditation, long-term planning. I sat down, gripping the phone. Stella hadn't just killed Travis in a moment of opportunity. She'd been slowly poisoning him for months, creating symptoms that would make his final heart attack seem like the natural progression of an illness. Elizabeth found me still sitting there when she came downstairs. One look at my face told her something was wrong. Shirley? What happened? I told her about Dr. Whitaker's discovery, watching her expression shift from concern to fury. That's why she needed time, Elizabeth said. She had to establish a medical history that would make his death seem natural. The changed will was just the final piece. And Jonathan Myers? I asked. How does he fit into this? Elizabeth's expression darkened. I've been doing some digging. Jonathan's son has a serious gambling problem. He's deep in debt to some dangerous people. I think Stella may be using that to blackmail Jonathan. The pieces were falling into place, but one crucial element was still missing: hard evidence, connecting Stella directly to the poisoning. That afternoon, George called with news. Mrs. Davies, I was going through some old receipts from when I drove Mr. Travis and Stella, and I found something. 3 times in the past year, I drove Stella to a storage facility on the edge of town. She always made me wait in the car. Do you have the address? Better than that. I have the unit number. She didn't know I saw her entering it. I relayed this information to Detective Rivera, who promised to secure a warrant immediately. While waiting for news about the storage unit, Elizabeth and I met with a handwriting expert who confirmed what we already suspected. The signature on the new will was a sophisticated forgery. It's good, she said, but there are telltale inconsistencies in the pressure points and the way certain letters connect. In my professional opinion, this is not Travis Davies' signature. Armed with this report, Elizabeth filed an emergency petition with the court to invalidate the current will and reinstate the previous one. The hearing is set for Monday, she told me. If we win, everything goes back to you until the criminal case is resolved. That evening, Detective Rivera called. Mrs. Davies, we searched the storage unit. Inside, we found vials of thallium, detailed notes on dosages and, most damning, Travis's medical records with annotations. There were also passport materials and cash. She was planning to flee the country. And Stella? We arrested her an hour ago at your house. She's being charged with first-degree murder. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. What about Victor Laszlo? Still missing. But we found evidence in the storage unit linking him to the crime as well. It's only a matter of time. After hanging up, I sat in Elizabeth's garden, watching twilight settle over the neat rows of roses. Justice for Travis was within reach, but the hollow ache of his absence remained. No arrest, no conviction would bring back my son. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Expecting another threat from Stella, or perhaps Victor, I almost didn't open it. When I did, my heart nearly stopped. It was a photo of Travis and me from years ago, sitting on the deck of our lake house, laughing at some forgotten joke. Below, it was a message. Mrs. Davies, you don't know me, but I worked with your son. He showed me this photo once and said it was his favorite because it captured the best day of his life. I thought you might want to have it. Tears blurred my vision as memories flooded back. That perfect summer day, the sun on the water, Travis teaching me to fish even though I'd protested that I was too old to learn. How proud he'd been when I caught a small bass, insisting we take a photo to commemorate my first catch. My phone rang, startling me from my reverie. It was Detective Rivera again, his voice tense. "Mrs. Davies, we've just received information that Victor Laszlo was spotted near Elizabeth's house. We're sending officers now, but I wanted to warn you." A crash from inside the house cut through the evening stillness, followed by Elizabeth's startled cry. I dropped the phone and ran inside, my heart hammering against my ribs. Elizabeth stood, in the kitchen, surrounded by broken glass, her face pale with shock. "The back door," she gasped, pointing. "Someone tried to break in. I threw a vase at him and he ran." Blue lights flashed outside as police cars arrived, officers quickly spreading out to search the property. Detective Rivera appeared moments later, his expression grim. "Are you both all right?" he asked, eyes scanning the kitchen. Elizabeth nodded, still shaken. I saw a man's face at the window. When he tried the door, I reacted instinctively. "Did you see where he went?" Rivera asked. "Toward the woods behind the house," Elizabeth said. Rivera dispatched officers to search the area, then turned to us. "We need to move you both to a secure location. Victor Laszlo is dangerous. He has a record of violent offenses that Stella managed to keep hidden." Within 20 minutes, we were settled in a hotel suite under police protection. Elizabeth made calls to her security company to repair her home's breached defenses, while I sat by the window, watching the city lights blur through the rain that had begun to fall. "Are you okay?" Elizabeth asked softly, sitting beside me. "I keep thinking about Travis," I admitted. "How he never saw through her. How much he trusted her." Elizabeth squeezed my hand. "Travis saw the good in people, just like his father. It wasn't a weakness, Shirley. It was what made him special." "Around midnight," Rivera called with an update. "We've apprehended Laszlo. He was trying to flee in a stolen car but crashed during the pursuit. He's in custody and talking, trying to cut a deal." "What is he saying?" I asked. "He claims Stella masterminded everything, that she approached him because of his pharmaceutical." Background. According to Laszlo, she's done this 3 times before, not just twice. There was another victim before Edward Fleming. The next morning brought more revelations. Jonathan Myers had turned himself in, confessing that Stella had blackmailed him into cooperating with the forged will by threatening his son. The court immediately invalidated the fraudulent document, restoring Travis's original will. By afternoon, reporters had caught wind of the story. Headlines screamed about the Black Widow of Westlake and her trail of dead husbands. Photographers camped outside the courthouse where Stella, hollow-eyed and handcuffed, was led in for her arraignment. Didn't attend. I couldn't bear to see her, to breathe the same air as the woman who had systematically poisoned my son for money. Instead, I met with Travis's personal assistant, Claire, who had contacted me after hearing about Stella's arrest. "There's something you should know," she said, sliding a folder across the cafe table. "Travis asked me to keep this somewhere safe. He said if anything happened to him, I should wait a month, then give it to you." Inside was a letter in Travis's handwriting, dated just 2 weeks before his death. "Mom, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. I've been feeling strange lately, confused, forgetful. The doctors say it's stress, but I'm not convinced. Stella has changed. Sometimes I catch her watching me with an expression I don't recognize. Cold, calculating. Last week, I found her in my office, going through my files. When I confronted her, she became defensive, then turned it around on me, accusing me of not trusting her. I've updated my will with Jonathan. Despite everything, I've left Stella provided for. I made vows, and I'll honor them. But the bulk of everything goes to you, with instructions for how I want the company run. If something does happen to me, and it's sudden or unexpected, please look deeper." I hate even writing this, but I need to acknowledge the fear that's been growing in me. I love you, Mom. You've always been my rock, my moral compass. I'm sorry if I haven't always listened. Travis' tears blurred my vision as I read his final words to me. Travis had suspected something was wrong. He had tried to protect himself, to protect the company, but by then, it had been too late. He loved you very much, Claire said gently. He talked about you all the time. 2 days later, Elizabeth and I returned to my house, my real home, now empty of Stella's presence. The staff had already removed her belongings, storing them as evidence or for later disposal. As I walked through the familiar rooms, memories of Travis surrounded me. From the height marks penciled on the kitchen doorframe to the family photographs lining the staircase. This house held my history, my heart. And now it was mine again, though the victory felt hollow without Travis to share it. In his study, everything remained as he had left it. His favorite pen on the desk, a half-read book on the side table, his collection of vintage watches in their display case. I sat in his chair, running my fingers over the worn leather armrests, and allowed myself to truly grieve for the first time since his death. The preliminary hearing for Stella's case was scheduled for the following week. The evidence against her was overwhelming. The poison found in the storage unit, Victor Laszlo's testimony, the forged will, and a financial trail showing she had been siphoning money from Travis's accounts for months, preparing for her escape. The fight. District Attorney called to discuss the case, explaining that they were seeking the maximum penalty. With the evidence we have, plus Laszlo's testimony, she'll never see the outside of a prison again, he assured me. That evening, as I sat on the patio watching the sunset, Elizabeth joined me with 2 glasses of wine. To justice, she said, raising her glass. To Travis, I amended softly. We sipped in companionable silence, the golden light fading to purple dusk. What will you do now? Elizabeth asked eventually. I had been pondering that question myself. Davies. Holdings needed leadership, but the thought of stepping back into that world without Travis felt wrong somehow. I'm not sure, I admitted. The company was Travis's passion, not mine. I was always more interested in the charitable foundation. Elizabeth nodded thoughtfully. Maybe that's your answer. The Travis Davies Foundation has a nice ring to it. The Stau idea took root immediately. A foundation that would honor Travis's memory by supporting the causes he cared about. Education for underprivileged children, medical research, the arts. I think he would like that, I said, feeling a small spark of purpose ignite within me. The next morning, I met with the board of Davies Holdings to discuss the future. Margaret and George were there too, having become unexpected but valued allies. In the fight for justice, I've made a decision, I told them. I'll remain as chairperson of Davies Holdings, but I'm appointing Robert Chen as CEO. Robert had been Travis's right-hand man for years, trusted and capable. As for me, I'll be focusing on establishing the Travis Davies Foundation. The board approved unanimously, relief evident in their faces. The company would continue, stronger for having weathered this storm. Later that day, I visited Travis's grave for the first time since the funeral. The polished granite headstone gleamed in the afternoon sun, his name etched in bold letters. Travis Richard Davies, beloved son, visionary leader. I placed a single white rose on the grave, then sat on the small bench nearby. We got her, Travis, I said softly. She'll pay for what she did to you, and your legacy will live on, not just through the company, but through the lives the foundation will touch. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves overhead, and for a moment, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead would not be easy. There would still be dark days, moments when grief would overwhelm me. But I had found my purpose again. A way to honor Travis that felt right. Elizabeth was waiting in the car when I returned. Ready? She asked. I nodded, looking back once more at my son's resting place. Yes, I think I am. As we drove away, I realized that while Stella had taken Travis from me, she had failed in her ultimate goal. The true inheritance, the values, the memories, the love that Travis and I shared, was something she could never touch, never diminish, never steal. That was mine to keep forever. And in the end, it was worth more than all the money and property in the world. It was priceless. It was love. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below, and meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.